Okay, let's start with the astrological analysis. Alright, let's take out his professions first. So we see that the ascendant is Leo and Mars is the Atmakaraka, is in the sign of Leo. Then you also should notice by now there is a Kala Sarpa Yoga in his chart formed between the nodes and Rahu Ketu. Ketu is moving towards Mars and Rahu is going away. Alright, so only the moon is outside of this placement, but it's a very powerful Kala Sarpa Yoga, and most of the planets are within the encompassment of the nodes. Very important. So those are the first few things you have to pick up from the chart. Alright. Then of course, as usual, we see that Mars is forming a Raj Yoga for the Leo ascendant year. It's extremely powerful Mars, and we will get to that in a bit. First, let's take out his profession about the construction as well as the real estate business that he has. It's very simple in his case. Okay, the fourth cusp lord Mars is in the ascendant forming the Raj Yoga. Mars on the ascendant already makes him on the path of real estate and all of those things. And it's in the sign of Leo, where he's a leader, an entrepreneur, or he's a person that had to create his own kingdom through real estate. That's very straightforward for this. But we also need Mercury involved if it's a business, right? So we need to have connections to Mercury and the seventh lord, the 11th lord, and all of that. If he's buying and selling and improving that real estate. So for that, we need to find that connection. The Lagna lord Sun is in the sign of Mercury. That's a good thing. It's in the 11th Rashi for profits and gains. It deposits the Atmakaraka Mars. On top of that, we also need the seventh cusp lord involved, that is Saturn, and he is conjunct Mercury, who rules the Sun, who indirectly deposits Mars. So all of that is taken care of. But much of his business was buying and selling. For buying, you need the 11th house. For selling, you need the 12th house. That's happening here. And what is interesting about him, three planets are starved in the sign of the moon. This is a very difficult one when it comes to the sign of Cancer. Saturn is starved, Venus is starved, Mercury is starved. Alright? Then Saturn is starving Venus, Saturn is also starving Mercury. Mercury and Venus are delighting Saturn. So many things going on in the 12th house. The moment you see so many planets in the 12th, automatically you should think that this is a person that will have a lot of secrets and such things. That's happened here. And you have a malefic planet here, and we have star planets here. So much of the secrets could be associated with all these three planets. But since we're talking about his business, the moment we have Mercury in the 12th, who is the planet of business, is the 11th lord of gains, and also the 7th lord in the 12th, that's always going to lead to some losses as well as some bankruptcies which he had filed. Those two things we take care. Not only is that connected to buying and selling of properties, you also see the businesses involved here.
Note that Saturn, Mercury, and Venus are in Trishita Avashta.
Since Mercury is taking care of all of this in the Rashi chart, we also need to find connection to the second house of profits, right? And Mercury, of course, rules the second house, and he deposits the Sun, who deposits Mars, and the fourth lord here. That's taking care of it. But once again, you notice that second lord is in the 12th. That's causing all these problems of losses, right? 12th house is the house of losses, or hidden things at least here. So those things are pretty much taken care by Mercury. Next, let's take a look at his main profession, that is the administration as well as the presidentship. Why did he win? And the reason he won is that very powerful position for Mars to create the Raj Yoga. But that is not enough actually. As I've explained in the previous examples, we need the connection of Sun and Saturn strongly involved here. And here we see that Mars is in the nakshatra of Maga, right? That is the throne, and he is the one forming the Raj Yoga. Then, for the title of the president and also to have the power and authority in the world, remember I told you when you see Sun and Rahu, Sun, Saturn, Rahu, the triple conjunctions, those are the ones that give it, and they have to be associated with the important houses here. Sun and Rahu are conjunct in the 11th Rashi from the ascendant. Fantastic. Okay, this is the one that gives him the power and authority. One interesting thing also is that Kala Sarpa Yoga, and it's a full moon, right? That's already a very powerful position for him to have in the world. It's a super powerful Kala Sarpa Yoga because of the full moon involved in this and close to the eclipse birth. So it was fated event for America, fated event for the world that he came into power. This I wrote in my blog articles 5 years ago before even he came to power, because when he was running for this race and the campaigns and all of that, it was a time when such a personality would rise. Okay, that also I predicted. Not because of Donald Trump, just because of some conjunctions in the sky, which was particularly the Jupiter Rahu conjunction in the sky that happened when he was rising in that time in politics. So that's there. But was it a perfect sun? No. As you noticed, one thing with him, and when it comes to administration, was he failed miserably. All right. The nature of Rahu, as I told you, is that he's a magician or he's a shape shifting planet. He projects something that which is not there. All right. So people are of the opinion, of course, now after knowing all the things he did, is that he's a grandiose narcissist. It's all about him. Even during a situation where the worst happened, like there was a cyclone in Haiti, there was an earthquake, there was a tornado. Imagine the whole of USA burned down. Still, he would make that event about him. He goes to that event and he talks about himself. It's all about himself every time. That's grandiose narcissism at its best. If you want to notice that, you have to look at Donald Trump. The problem was we don't care if he's a narcissist or any other thing, but important point is how did he make use of the power and authority that came to him? All right. So when he was on the campaign, he projected himself like he's going to be the best version of the president that is. Literally, he enacted on stage many times. He projected to people how he was going to sit in office, how he was going to do the work. All this like a drama he enacted on stage. People fell for it. People thought that by giving him negative publicity, they could stop him from winning the president race. But it did not happen. The opposite happened. Because he got all the negative publicity, he was always in the spotlight. He sort of incepted the public to vote for him. That's the charismatic nature of Rahu eclipsing the sun. For you and me, as a normal person, you look at Donald Trump and you think he's the most able person there. You'll think that this is the perfect version of a man and he is the most able leader in this case. He is the one that will save America and take America home. But unfortunately, he proved it completely wrong. The opposite happened. The reason is that that's the nature of Rahu. Rahu always is not ready for it and he will do the opposite of that. So it's like people, for instance, they may not have so much of power in them, okay, like the strength. And you notice this even in animals in nature. Some animals, they don't have the capacity to basically protect themselves. They don't have a good defense system. For instance, the snake, it does not have a good defense system. Anything around it, like a more robust or a more heavily built creature like a tiger or a lion or even an elephant or any other monkeys, whatever that can easily beat up the snake and kill it. But what does the snake do? The snake, in order to scare off the people, it just hisses, right? It immediately uses its reflexes to raise its hood and scare off the opposite party in some sense. Not only the snakes, many creatures in nature, it's one of the defense mechanisms that do that. And that comes with the nodes here, basically. It's the exact nature of the nodes. That's why the Rahu Ketu axis is equated to the snakes. You project and you hiss and you do the opposite of what you are. Now people think that, okay, now I should be scared. You test them a little bit more and everything will crumble and it will fall apart. Just like the magician on the stage, you stand on the stage and that person is doing the magic trick. When you see that magic trick, you'll be like really amazed and you'll be dumbfounded. You'll think, wow, what such a great thing happened. I mean, I'm super amazed and impressed with this guy. But the moment he reveals that magic trick, which normally they don't, but if they reveal the magic trick, if you're able to see that through, then you'll think it is nothing, but it was just, an act basically. And that's what happens with the Sun Rahu conjunction. I was saving this explanation until Donald Trump because this is important for you to understand. The same thing happens with Sun Saturn conjunction, Sun Saturn Rahu conjunction, Saturn in the 10th from the Sun, Sun Ketu conjunction. Why Sun Ketu conjunction also will do the same? It's the opposite, right? It's always the case. The opposites will behave the same. Whether a person's confidence is shunted because of Ketu conjuncting the Sun and they don't have any masculinity within them to project to the world, the result is the same. The end result will be the same. It's still a man who is not projecting his masculine side in the correct way. Whether you are a Donald Trump or whether you don't have any confidence to go out there and do what you have to do in the world, both are the same because Donald Trump is an utter failure at his work. The same is with the other person who could not do it because he had a lack of confidence. The end result is the same, but the modality of Rahu and Ketu getting it done is totally different. So it's very unfortunate because we saw that many other presidents, many other people in power, they also had the same sort of conjunctions, but they got many things done, but not Donald Trump, unfortunately. When he got into office, he was not ready for it. That's what happens with Rahu. You're not ready for it, you're not skilled enough. The unfortunate situation, why I tell this is because
See that Rahu is in the sign of Gemini and Mercury rules Gemini. Gemini or Mercury as a planet is all about skills. So Rahu here is projecting that he has skills, but unfortunately the opposite happens. So it's unfortunate for the country in this sense.
because when he came into power, it was in his late 70s. And that is a great time to come into power. It's the Saturn's natural age. He had finished his Rahu's maturation age of 41, 42. If he had mastered Rahu Ketu in those times, alright, and even in the late 60s period, he was in the Rahu Dasha. If he had mastered Rahu and if he had really been on top of his Rahu and the game that he had, the A game, if he brought it to the table, he could have accomplished a lot in his presidency. And you seeing this Mars in Maga in the sign of Leo, you could have expected fantastic growth for the USA in that window of time. That's what it should have happened. But many things just got in the way and he could not, do what he had to do. So much to an extent that he was in office and he tweets once saying that I was not expecting this work to be so difficult. I inherited a lot of difficulty on me. He was probably thinking that it was an easy job being the president of one of the most powerful country on earth. But it was not the case, right? Because the president, like I said, or the king is more of a servant than even the servant in the kingdom. Like I said, the opposite house of Aquarius, which is ruled by Saturn, which is the democratic side, and also the side where you are serving the public. The king is serving the public, right? The servants can take turns and they can go through the shifts in their service to the king, right? One servant will come into the kingdom, they will serve until morning to evening, another batch will start. The second set of people will come and they will get some rest. But the king is only one, right? The king is literally working his ass off in the presidency and he has to. It's not an easy job. It is the most difficult job you can ever have to be the leader because everyone is looking up to you. He could have been. He was, of course, a commanding officer of the army also, right, for USA, and president holds the button to all the nuclear weapons and everything. That is that Mars in very powerful position in the sign of Leo. But unfortunately, this did not work in his favor because Rahu just pulled the rug under his feet, right? So much to an extent that he was impeached. He was not, again, a very powerful person to avoid that. If he had done a good, decent job when his campaign as well as winning the elections in the right way, it could have not led to that. Rahu is in the 11th Rashi here. 11th Rashi, of course, it's the Rashi of public titles and everything, but it's also the Rashi of acceptance from the public. Constantly, he was at odds with the media, which is the sign of Gemini. Mercury is starred by Saturn, is starred by the moon. People made it a lot personal about him. They made continuous attacks on him. All the media professionals, they made it a point to bring him down. In some sense, it also worked for him, all right, and he used that in his advantage. But on the other side, He was never getting the right kind of publicity within his home country. All right, foreign country, and that's again in the sign of Cancer here. Foreign press also made a big laughing stock out of him. He did not have any good publicity. But for him, he enjoyed that spotlight, which is what that narcissistic personality does. For them, whether it is good or bad, they just want to get all the attention and they want to be in the spotlight, which he enjoyed. But in terms of the growth of the country, nothing really got done. He had big foreign policies, he had some amazing ideas, whatever he wanted to implement. See, the thing is that whether it is good, bad, or ugly, every person will have something good going as well for them, right? This Mars is fantastic, and his view was that it should be America first. Nothing wrong with that, literally to speak, okay? Because a king should only take care of your country and you have to mind your own business first. There is no business for you outside of your country. If you want to expand and if you want to conquer, yes, you can go on that crazy madness like how Napoleon did, or all these British Empire people did, or the French did in those times, because there is only so much land you can conquer. At the end of the day, Earth is only limited by resource. The more you conquer, you'll not be satisfied and you'll still have the desire to keep conquering. That's what happens to Ashoka in India. He gives up all this Kshatriya Dharma and he becomes a saint. He converts himself to Buddhism after he underwent that massacre and that bloodshed. When he saw that, he couldn't handle it. Okay, because there is only so much. The conquer literally has to come within you. You have to conquer your human urges. That's what is happening. There is an internal battle also to be conquered. And that's what Mars does, literally, in the opposite sign of Scorpio, right? So it's the nature of Mars to first look for answers on the outside, but if he doesn't find that, he's going to find the internal answers. But for him, he had some very solid policies, but some of it was not well thought of. For instance, the building of the wall. Immigration, of course, every country suffers with that. Every one of us will have those problems in any given country you're living in. Who doesn't? But in USA, the problem is all these menial jobs, the day-to-day jobs, okay, working in the farms, working in all these coffee shops, McDonald's, and all of that. Not many white-collar people are able to do that. It's only the immigrants from Mexico or other countries around that can do it. There could have been legal ways of immigration. Some of the good policies that he had was he said we only want highly skilled staff into USA, like who are into technology or into other things, which is partially true. You want only the best in the world, the cream of the crop to be in your country, but you also need other people to do the day-to-day jobs. Otherwise, who is going to do it? All right, if they are not going to do it, imagine today, I can tell you, I mean, I live in Belgium now, and to get a plumber or a carpenter to come and do some work for you here is a nightmare. There is nobody who is willing to do that. There is a lack of manpower. So these things are very common in all the developed countries because everyone, if they're educated, who is going to take up that day-to-day jobs? Either you have to be skilled enough to do it yourself, which not many people don't have the time, neither the patience to learn those skills. The other thing is you have to let someone else to do it. And if you have immigrants doing it, of course you have to support them, right? And it has to be a proper integration into the country. The modalities were not correct, unfortunately. It became an authoritarian regime. It was nothing short of dictatorship, the way he was behaving in office and the way he was having his policies, because that's what happens with Sun Rahu conjunction. It's a pity, really, because it could have led to something more powerful. If only the Sun Rahu Moon Ketu was there, you could have thought this chart would have been much powerful. You put that dispositor of all those planets, Mercury, in a very severe state in the 12th. Again, it's a Dusthana, right? It's a house of difficulties. He was facing one difficulty after another, one negative thing after another. He had problems on the way. It was not like he didn't. He did not have the right kind of management style, which is Mercury. Neither did he have the right kind of speech to motivate people to use their ideas in the right way. Neither did the press support him. They all gave him the attention that he craved for. In fact, they should have done the opposite. If they had not given him so much of attention, probably he would have got something done. That's one of the antidotes for narcissistic people. You have to ignore them completely. Unfortunately, being the president of a country, you can't ignore them anymore. So you have to give them the attention. He got all the attention. He personalized his information, the tweeting and all that crazy things he kept on doing every day. There was no control to his tweets. You see that Saturn is starving Mercury. Mercury is in the sign of the moon. He's personalizing his tweets. He's personalizing everything about media and communication. The intensity of this was almost like a diarrhea, continuously tweeting, continuously speaking, and he had problems with his speech. Whenever he spoke, he slurred, and there were some words he could not pronounce. There are like a dictionary of words you can find for Donald Trump who could not pronounce it, unfortunately. And then he made fun of people and even made fun of handicapped people. And he was a person that tried to be diplomatic, but it did not work in that way. For instance, he was also supporting the KKK clan at one side, and he was also saying there were mistakes on both parties where protesters, normal protesters, were fighting against the bigotism and the racism. There was a clash between the nationalistic people as well as the normal people of the society. Mistakes were on the both side. Of course, mistakes were on the both side, but he has to favor one person in that situation who kind of instigated that. Today's modern day and age, you can't still live with your racial ideas. It's not possible anymore because the whole point of religion, philosophy, and the modern way of thinking in science is that whether you are black, pink, purple, gray, yellow, all kinds of color, we don't care. What matters is that the same consciousness exists within me as much as it exists within you. I'm God who is talking to you, who is God. That is the Vedic concept, the Sanatana Dharma concept, which is also the concept of science. All human beings are the same. All our needs are the same. We may look different, but everything about us is the same. We came from the same source, even by evolution, right? Everything started from the amoeba. There is all common ancestors to all of us. So these things he could have, if he wanted to, as a leader, he could have projected himself to be the ideal version of a man and did the right kind of actions, been very strict with his policies internally and externally, which is with the foreign people. He couldn't. He had to please both parties, which is the KKK clan and also the normal people, which is the public of America, all those people fighting. He ended up, making enemies on both sides. All right. So he had a cult like following, you can see, with that Sun Rahu conjunction. And interestingly, people looked up to him as if he was going to take them home or, make them liberated in some sense. That's the way they were looking towards him. He had the capacity. With that Mars on the Lagna, it's a very powerful Mars. He could have, but he never used it in the right way. It's a very sad situation you can see in this case. Then another interesting thing about him is that when it comes to this Saturn, Mercury, and Venus conjunction in the 12th, many of the documents about taxes and other important evidences with his finances, all of that is hidden, right? The policies with foreigners, and he has connections to Russia, and all of that speculation is all hidden. It's in the 12th house, it's with foreigners, it's in the sign of Cancer. Then we have afflicted planets here, all three of them. On top of this, we also have the 8th cusp lord, which is Jupiter, which shows hidden things here in the sign of Libra, which is again Venus rules this and is in the 12th, which is again a hidden Rashi. It's starved. Jupiter is starved, Venus is starved. All these are big problems here on the hidden houses. So for taxes, we need the 8th Rashi involved because that is usually what you're paying back to the government and all of that, and it's not there. It's hidden. Sun rules the government. He is also ruled by Mercury, who is in a hidden house. Many secrets, many hidden things. We also see problems to Jupiter, right? Jupiter is severely starved, and the dispositor of Jupiter is also starved, which is Saturn. That is again problems with his belief systems, trying to again be diplomatic when it comes to religion because it's in the sign of Libra, but you cannot be diplomatic when it comes to religion. You cannot please both parties. You cannot say that the KKK clan is also fine and also the normal public is also fine. It's not the way it works. If you're a nationalist, you're a nationalist. But if you're not a nationalist person. If you're a liberal person, you are a liberal person. You cannot be both at the same time. He had to struggle between that. You can notice here that Jupiter is actually in a very difficult position. He's in fact conjunct the third cusp, and constantly what he did was he kept changing his views about whatever he was following. There was always constant changes in his belief systems and what he stood for and what he did not stand for. You can watch the videos. There have been videos on YouTube. They did back to back comparison. Donald Trump giving the same speech 1 month ago, he was in support of it. And then after 1 month, he changed his view immediately. That's what happens with Jupiter in starvation in the third cusp. Because third cusp is all about changes. It's the natural sign of Gemini. You'll always have some problems where Jupiter is there because their policies and their ideas are constantly changing. Very unfortunate situation. And of course, the lying problem is an habitual liar. That is one of the main characteristics of cluster B personalities, especially narcissistic people. They are manipulative and they also lie. That's a very common trait between all these cluster B personalities. The second cusp lord here, Mercury, is severely starved. The moment you notice Saturn Mercury conjunction, and if Ketu gets involved in that picture or Rahu gets involved, and you can be very sure about it. Manipulative about his own words, and he says, I did not say that. He would have just told you that in front of live TV, and there would be a video recording of that. But then he goes and claims it's fake news. And that fake news, you see that Rahu is in the sign of Gemini, which is the house of media and communication. Rahu there is the fake attribute of it, right? He always goes around claiming it is fake news. Then the dispositor Mercury is conjunct Saturn, which was basically lying and in denial, basically. The denial part happens when Saturn is conjunct any of these planets. So there was big problems here with Saturn conjunct Mercury. All right, and this was the reason he was manipulative by himself. And you also notice a Kapata Yoga, right, in his chart, which is Moon is conjunct Ketu. The mind is manipulative by itself. That is very important here. And one thing you can see, fourth from the Moon is Rashi aspected by Rahu. The fourth lord is Jupiter, and he is Rashi aspected by Mars. All these are malefic planets. But the most important position will always be the fourth cusp lord and the fourth from the Moon. That's the most important one. And fourth from the Lagna, of course. So here you see that fourth from the Moon is Rashi aspected by Rahu. Then we see the fourth cusp lord is Mars, and he's fine by himself, but he's a malefic planet, right, in general. Then we notice that we have, for manipulating the speech and the words and all of that, that Mercury is conjunct Saturn, and Rahu is in the sign of Gemini, confirming all these problems. So it's very unfortunate that he could not make use of what he expected out of the presidency. For people with Sun Rahu conjunction or Sun Saturn or the Sun Saturn Rahu triple conjunction or Sun Ketu, whatever, those conjunctions of the nodes and Saturn to that, they want to be on top of the food chain. That is like their ultimate dream. Once they reach the top, they want to be there, see that, okay, now I'm important in the society. Everyone is looking up to me. It is like the sun. The sun is the center of the solar system. That's the grandiosity. Okay, all planets are revolving around the sun, and they want the entire world to revolve around them, which they will get eventually, right? One way or another, by hook or crook, they will go on the top. It's very common with this kind of situation, especially you put Rahu into the equation, it's very common that they will rise to the top. Problem is that once they're on the top, now they have that power, they have that authority that they were craving so much for. What do you make of that? Are you prepared for that? No, they are not prepared. That's what is the big disaster with that conjunction, because you get what you ask for. Because, there is some other finer concepts of it. We will not go into that in this course. They get what they ask for, and they have a very powerful mind to manifest it also. I gave you the clue already. But when you get on the top, you need also the skills and you have to know how to use it, right? It's like a person who is not ready to drive a Ferrari and God gives them a Ferrari because they have been craving for it. They have not even learned how to drive a Ferrari. Then what are they going to do? They will go and crash that Ferrari and destroy the vehicle and maybe even kill themselves on the process, right? So that's what happens with this kind of nodal conjunctions. It's very unfortunate, really. So that's one of the important things about this chart, okay, about the presidency itself. We will go on, I will explore more as we speak. We will try to get more understanding from the chart. So, of course, we need the 10th Rashi Lord involved for the presidency. Here you see that Venus rules Taurus is there for Leo. It's a very important sign. Remember, it's the sign of politics and it is one of the important signs for wealth, which is Taurus, right? He was quite wealthy. At least he claims that he is a billionaire. And on top of that, we have the 10th cusp lord Venus conjunct Saturn, okay, the 7th cusp lord, and it's in the 12th Rashi, alright. And all this is connected to the ruler of the sun, which is Mercury. That's another connection we have for this. When he got accepted into running the race and also he won the elections, there was not a full acceptance from the world. You notice the 12th house again, the Dusthana. And for him, when he had to step down also recently, when Joe Biden came to power, he created a big circus out of it and he instigated people to storm the Capitol. And he was a sore loser because that's what happens with that Sun Rahu conjunction. There was complete denial of the laws. He denied that they thought the election was not fair and square. Nobody won. Still, he thought he was a president and he was not willing to give up the office. The smooth transition of power did not happen. Because you notice that the 10th Lord is in the 12th conjunct Saturn and all of that. That power, the loss of power was not easy. And it's in a starvation year. And he felt starved when that power was lost. And it's all in Trishita Avashta, these three planets. Trishita means an unquenchable thirst. This person has an unquenchable thirst for power and authority. And also for women because Venus is there. Then we have Saturn, the 7th cusp lord is there for business and women again. Mercury is there, who is the Dharakaraka. Mercury for managing the business and the finances because he is the 2nd cusp lord and the 11th cusp lord. There is an unquenchable thirst that is going on here with the Trishita Avashta. Very important point. The other interesting nature of his presidency, also having problems with the impeachment, was the 10th lord in the 12th. There was speculation that he was going to have loss of power. Not only that, we also see the Atmakaraka Mars in the sign of Sagittarius. When I wrote that article, when he came to power itself, we had predicted that there could have been some impeachment because Sagittarius as a sign is always going to show fall of grace, fall from heights. And that's what something we all thought it would happen because he was not ready for the presidency. But Mars is strong here. You see that Mars is very powerful. Jupiter is manifesting Mars. He is the lord of it. And Mercury is in his own sign, Rashi aspecting it. So he was protected and he was let go of all those problems in the end. Then you also know the nature of his relationship with women. He probably does not have a good relationship. He disrespects them and he has losses through women. Venus is in the 12th. He has had many extramarital affairs. You notice that 7th Lord is in the 12th with Venus. There is Trishita. Then Dharakaraka Mercury is also in the 12th. Those things are very clearly seen. And he has had relationships with porn stars. He does not have any proper nature of treating women. You can treat him like a male chauvinist in many sense, alright? And he's not a person that knows how to behave with women around him. He abuses them and uses them as a stepping stone for his own success. That's what happens when Sun Rahu conjunction is there. For him, everyone and anyone in their life is like a stepping stone. That's one of the main qualities of a narcissistic personality disorder. They will take you, use you as if you are an object. For you, in their eyes, you are just an object that is meant to be used to get to where you have to go. You're not a person, you don't have any emotions. You are meant to serve them, and that is all there is. If you know how to serve them, you are of use to them. Otherwise, you're as good as dead. So, one thing, it's very painful. All these are words that are easy to tell, and you may understand these things firsthand by listening to these words. But being through those experiences is horrible, which was the White House staff. How many people did he fire one after another once he was in power? When he was to get to office and to become the president, he used all of them. But once he became the president, he never kept any one of them. Alright. Then also you notice that he was this person in the media entertainment industry. He had that role of this apprentice where he used to do "You're fired." That's the one trick he was doing always in that show, right? That also again you notice that Sun Rahu conjunction in the sign of Mercury, that of media and communication, right? The Atmakaraka Mars is connected to that because he disposits that and is conjunct the Rahu planet here. And Mars is the fire, basically. Right? He is the one that is brutal. He can kill. Remember, I told you. Sun and Mars are very similar. The only difference is Mars will kill if he has to. And the firing nature comes from Mars. The cruelty comes from Mars. He is a cruel planet. Sun is still cruel, but he's a noble planet. The most noblest of all. So he wouldn't do that. And that Rahu conjunction to the Sun can disrupt the Sun. But Mars is the one that has that cruelty to do it. So those things are happening here. For the media related profession, we have the sign of Gemini involved. We need the third cusp involved. Venus is conjunct Mercury, right? Directly we have that media entertainment connection. Venus rules the third cusp conjunct Mercury, who rules the Sun, who in turn disposits the Atmakaraka Mars. Very straightforward connection. And of course, he was famous because of that. And the 11th cusp is involved. We need the fifth cusp of creativity. Jupiter is in the sign of Venus, and Venus disposits Jupiter conjunct Mercury. We need the seventh lord involved, that is Saturn. And all of it is taken care here because Saturn is conjunct Mercury and Venus. Straightforward connection. One thing you can notice why E as a person did not have a great Saturn second return or the Rahu Ketu maturation age properly done. The reason is you notice many charts we have seen. Saturn and Rahu are very closely connected in this chart. They are very close to each other. Ketu is very away from Saturn, not close to Saturn. And we noticed that in the case of JP Morgan, Saturn and Ketu were conjunct. Even though he had similar personality problems and he was a monopolist, okay, he did not like competition, JP Morgan also, he did not stop people from getting the support in the face of adversity, and he helped America get ahead in life. Here, Donald Trump, he had so much power and authority. He became the president, which was even more powerful position than JP Morgan himself, right? President of the country. JP Morgan just set up an institute or a bank for helping America to bail them out of bankruptcy. But he became the president. If he wanted to, he could have. Donald Trump could have done many big things, but because that Rahu is so close to Saturn, right? It's not going to happen. Ketu is so far away from Saturn that he could not change his personality issues, and that's why he had a troubled Rahu Ketu maturation age. If it was not for that reason, if imagine Ketu was here and Rahu was on this side, totally different story would have come out of it. We can again keep speculating that this could have happened, what if, what that. It is just like this Marvel new TV show that is coming, what if and what that. What ifs and what that is not going to be taking us home, right? It's not the reality. What is reality is what's going on now. You can speculate, like I said, I can sit here and think, what if I can fly Jupiter tomorrow and all of that. But it's not the truth. What is the truth is I'm living on Earth now and we have to face that ground reality. We can't constantly keep denying. We have to see what the flaws are and keep improving on that, which will never happen with that Sun Rahu conjunction close to Saturn. It's never going to happen. Don't even expect that. That's why he's continuously going to be like that until the end of his life. In India, we say one proverb for that. We say that a person born with certain qualities at the time of birth, he will take that until that day he dies. It's not going to change. So that qualities and that personality will die with him. That's all there is to it. It takes enormous amount of conscious and conscientious action to reflect on our own shortcomings and to overcome them. It's not possible by all human beings. Even under the face of this fantastic Mars, it's not possible. Let me just tell you. Because of that Saturn being so close to Rahu and Saturn being so close to the Sun. You can notice that a fantastic Navamsha in his case. We are not going to go full details into the Navamsha, but let me show you what are all going on here. Mars is in the sign of Sagittarius. There is a Jupiter-Mars conjunction, a wealth combination in the Navamsha. Jupiter is fantastically, graciously supporting this Mars. Alright? And he's in his own house. Fourth from Mars is that amazing Jupiter. Not only is this the wealth combination, it's also very much directed will and directed purpose. For him, he all did use this for making wealth and becoming rich in the world. Nothing else came out of it. Then Mercury is amazing. Mercury is super powerful in the Navamsha. Then we have Sun in exaltation, but still conjunct Rahu. Saturn is in Mula Trikona, still conjunct Venus. It's an enviable Navamsha in many ways. Alright? But there are problems, like I said. Why there are problems? The problems are here in the Rashi. So if you miss the analysis of the Rashi and don't understand the subtleties which I've explained in this past 50 examples or so, you'll make big blunders with this chart. And that's what happened. Many people made erroneous predictions. They did not understand this astrology chart at all. They made big bungles about what he could have done in office. Even predicted the election wrong. There was no doubt that he was going to win the election because he played people right into his trap. And that's a very smart businessman. He's a very conniving and conspicuous businessman with that Sun Rahu conjunction in the sign of Mercury. Very smart person. Don't underestimate him. He's very much capable when it comes to how to sell his idea. He's a very good salesman with that sign of Gemini being like that. But for him, the problem is that he could not take advantage of whatever was presented to him. The best of the opportunities came to him, but he did not take advantage of that. Okay, it's a very unfortunate situation. Then, of course, we have to see his book writing, right? Why did he write 3 autobiographies about himself? Can you guess? Take a pause and maybe try to guess. The 3 autobiographies about himself only happens because of that Sun Rahu conjunction. It's all about him. That's the Lagna Lord, and it's in the sign of Gemini. It's the Rashi of writing. It's the natural third Rashi. 3 autobiographies came out of it. The number 3 planet Mars is in the Lagna. All that is making it about him. 3 things. It's all about him, always. Whether he goes, like I said, tomorrow we can have the most disastrous thing happening in US. With COVID also, it became all about himself. He took attention to him. He said, you could use the toilet cleaning solutions for getting rid of COVID without any proper assessment or no scientific backing and knowledge. Whatever comes to his mouth, like an oral diarrhea, he just keeps speaking without thinking. That's what happens with Saturn influencing Mercury. There is no scientific thought anymore. In fact, it's happening in the sign of Gemini, an amazing sign for scientific thought and research. But what is the nature of this? I told you. If it is afflicted, Mercury becomes superficial, just picking the top surface of the knowledge and acting as if they know everything about the subject. We have a doctor, a scientist on the same podium, but he goes on there and he says, please use that toilet cleaner and you'll be fine. You just drink a little bit and it will kill the virus. That's how stupid he was when it comes to his knowledge. Plain stupid. Mercury in affliction is that. And there are some speculations that most of his education documents were fudged. Alright, there is no guarantee that he passed. He's not apparently considered to be a smart student in his college or school days. That's also very true, most likely with that Saturn influencing Mercury and both of them being in starvation. But when it comes to the foreign policies, also you can notice much of those 3 planets are in the sign of Cancer in the 12th house. It's definitely the foreign policies. The 7th Lord Saturn is also in this 12th Rashi, confirming it's in the sign of Cancer about foreign policies. Much of it was starved. He did not have one proper diplomatic tie with many countries, including North Korea, China, Europe. All the leaders in Europe made him a laughing stock. That's that Saturn Rahu influence going on in the signs of Mercury. The leaders did not have an easy time with him, neither did he understand how to use that power and authority. He himself gave them a hard time. So they tried to balance him, tried to use the diplomacy of Venus, but Venus was very personal here because Venus is in the sign of Cancer. He made it all about himself, unfortunately. He made it about the single minded nature of America first. Some of it, again, you could say it is needed about especially trade, the taxes, and how The other countries, he said, was taking advantage of America. Maybe some of it was needed. There was no need for America to always lead the way. There could other countries also step up to that. He cut off the funding to the WHO and the UN at some point, right? And that was again the foreign things, funding that goes on. Basically, giving away resources to fight the pandemic or to fight and keep global peace. He did not feel that they were doing the right things and they were taking advantage of America, so he cut it off. Then he pulled off from Afghanistan. He was the one that proposed it. Maybe some of it was smart, and Afghanistan was a war that was going on for 20 years. But the way they executed that, the execution was horrible. So he says if he was in office, that wouldn't have happened. But do you think so? I wouldn't say that. Again, there needs to be a strategy, right? The strategy planet here, Mars, is good. Mars is very powerful in his case. He will have the right kind of strategy, but the management will be very poor because of Mercury here. He is the management planet. And the ideas of how to do it will be poor because of Mercury. The skills will be poor. And that's what happens for him. Sun also you can discount him because Sun is in a neutral dignity here. And Mars is delighting the nature of the Sun. That's the sign of Leo. But Rahu is disrupting the Sun. Mercury, the skills are lacking at the end of the day, whatever he does. That's the big problem. So he lost and he could not again win back the popular vote because the media, of course, ruined his image. People lost confidence in him, right? He did not prove what he was meant to take up the office for, be the president. They lost trust in his power handling capacity. That's because of that Rahu finally disappointing the Sun. Then he's of course written books, right? So we also have to catch that combination if it is true and if he is the one written that books or if there were any ghostwriters involved. Let's see. Mars, the Atmakaraka, is connected to the sign of Gemini through the Sun. Alright, so we have a connection to that. We need the writing planets involved. So there are no influences directly on Mars for the writing combination except that Jupiter is Rashi aspecting Mars. But second from Mars is influenced by Sun and Rahu. That's not enough. Third from Mars is holding Jupiter. That's one of the writing combinations. But fourth from Mars is now Rashi aspected by Mercury and Venus. And fifth from Mars is holding the Moon. So it's a writing combination that is there, but not a very powerful one because Moon is in the fifth, right? Moon is not directly connected to the Atmakaraka, is not in the second, or neither is Jupiter exalted, nor Venus or Mercury in exaltation. There is a writing combination, and the creative houses are also involved, which is the fifth house. The Moon is in that.
Moon Rashi aspects the second from Mars.
Moon is Rashi aspecting the Sun, the dispositor of Mars. That takes care of that fifth cusp connection. Then we also need the third cusp of writing involved, right? The grammar. And you notice that star planet Jupiter here, and that third lord is Venus, who is conjunct the dispositor of the Sun, and that connects to Mars as well. So there is some combinations, right? Then we need the ninth cusp involved. Mars himself rules the ninth cusp and is the Atmakaraka. So that's there. The writing combination definitely exists, but the lack of capacity once again is seen because Mercury is starved, Venus is starved, and the third cusp lord, Venus is starved. There is a starved planet in the third cusp, which is Jupiter. So most likely there could have, again, he needed some support and help, and evidently there are other authors who shared the same book with him. Other people supported him to write it, but I don't know how much he has contributed. Maybe the idea was this, it's possible the strategy was from him, and he's again a very good businessman because of having the Lagna Lord in the 11th, right? That's happening in the sign of Gemini, so there is no doubt about his business skills and media skills and selling it basically. He's a good salesman. If you ask me what is this chart, at first glance I see this, right? I don't know if it is Donald Trump or not. I would say it's a chart of a salesman. For me, that's what I look at. And I would definitely tell it's a chart of someone who is into real estate. So those two things are very nicely pulled off. Whether it's a president, whether it's a very powerful CEO or not, all that we'll have to go a little bit into advanced things. And even that is very straightforward. You see that Lagna Lord in the 11th with Rahu. By now, after 50 charts, you should be able to pick it up very easily for him. So that is one way of the writing combination. The other way you can look at it is Mars, the Atmakaraka, is in the sign of Sagittarius in the Navamsha. You juxtapose that into the Rashi chart, you get Moon here, the sign of Sagittarius. That becomes a combination for writing because Moon, of course, is the writer, right? And gives him a possibility to earn money through education. And through his books, he was educating people. That's one thing. Fifth cusp is there for creativity also. Then, second from the Moon is not housing any planets, but third from the Moon is Rashi aspected by Mercury and Venus and the seventh Lord, which is Saturn. So, there is again some support here. Then third from the Moon is also Rashi aspected by Jupiter. That's another way of seeing the writing combination. Of course, Mars, who rules the ninth cusp, is disposited by the Sun, and Sun Rashi aspects the Moon. That's taking care of it. And third cusp Lord Venus is ruling Jupiter, right? And Jupiter rules the Moon. So that direct combination to third cusp also we see in the D1 chart.